Evening, everybody. Normally I'd go on some spiel about me having some condition or another or what have you going on. Honestly, even though I've got the lurgy, although I don't sound it, and that's mainly because I've been taking Lemsip, I can't be fucked with that because something has royally pissed me off big time with this one. And you know what? It's not even the Trump assassination, although that's pretty damn bad in and of itself. Or sorry, assassination attempt, not assassination. He's still alive, let me clarify. No, I am of course talking about Huw Degenerate Edwards. Huw Edwards is walking free on a suspended sentence after being caught red-handed or white-handed or whatever you want to call him with indecent photos of children being violated. I'm just going to repeat that just so it sinks in that little bit more and so the sun bloody blinds me while it's at it. Anyway, here's it again. Huw Edwards found guilty of having indecent images of children has been given a suspended sentence. He is currently walking free as of right now. I do not even have words that will adequately describe how fucked off I am that this nonce is walking free. And yet we have people who are posting memes on the internet. We have people growling at dogs and people shouting at police that are facing fucking custodial sentences. And people wonder why others like Leilani Dowding, or whatever her name is giving such a tearful response of how fucked this country is. How is it that Huw Degenerate Edwards is able to walk free while people who say things on the internet are locked up just like that? I dare somebody to try and make that make sense. Even right now, I feel physically sick. And that's not just the cold kicking in. This is me absolutely fucking appalled, disgusted at what's gone on. Just when I thought my rancor of the government could not be higher, this is what happens. It begs the question, are some of these judges responsible as well for having some of this shit on their phones or their computers? Kind of begs the question, doesn't it, folks? Considering they're allowing that wanker to walk the streets. I wouldn't be surprised at this point if somebody does go out of their way to go and end his life. As much as I am loath to say it, even paedophiles need to be locked up and protected from other people, much as I'm loath to say that. But that's more on a matter of human decency rather than whether or not he bloody deserves it, quite frankly. I know some people are not going to like that opinion, but we mustn't stoop to what these subhuman pieces of pond scum and shit have become themselves. Now, of course, there will be some prisoners who may decide to take matters into their own hands and decide to go after people like him. Or, as I said, I suspect somebody is going to take matters into their own hands, which I don't condone, but I will completely understand why somebody would want to do that to a particular piece of shit like Huw the Degenerate Edwards. Honestly, I think if it was down to me, and this is just my humble opinion, I think if it were down to me and somebody was found guilty of any sex-related crimes, cut off what identifies them. That's honestly my thoughts. Cut off what identifies them as that particular gender. And by the way, for all the snowflakes out there, there are only two genders. At least then, it will serve as a harsh reminder to what happens to scum of the lowest order. Now, I don't know about you, but I think anybody who gets caught on having indecent images, who gets caught on having violated children or taking advantage of children, they need to be stroke number one. They need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Not given, not even a slap on the wrist, because that would be an offence in and of itself to people who do get let off with a slap on the wrist. But he's practically being let off with a pat on the fucking back. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. I wonder how that judge must sleep at night, knowing that he's allowing that nonce to walk free. I wonder how he must sleep. Probably like a fucking baby, knowing him, because we do have a corrupt stroke number two. We're off to a good start, aren't we? Anyway, we have a two-tier government, two-tier justice system, and two-tier policing, as well as two-tier media. And I suspect we will hear nothing from Keir the traitor Starmer on this. After all, he considered people like Jimmy Tiny Cockosaurus Rex Savile one of his mates. And my God, he really was a tiny Cockosaurus Rex. But if I was in Keir the traitor Starmer's shoes right now, I would seriously be considering why the hell he's been allowed to run rampant. Why the hell is Huw Degenerate Edwards allowed to walk the streets while people who post things on the internet are getting jailed? I would want justice for that shit. I don't know about you, but if I found out that somebody has been found guilty of some of the worst crimes known to humanity, I think I'd want a little bit of justice. I think I'd want to give a paedophile a little bit more than a suspended fucking sentence, bluntly speaking. I'd be wanting to give him a little bit more than just a pat on the back. More like pat him down and then send him to fucking prison. But then again, we live in a world where common sense is now an ever increasingly rare resource, even more so than gold and platinum. Though 24 karat is probably going to be more than I ever see. Anyway, the point is, that man, Huw Degenerate Edwards, should not even be seeing the light of day. He should not be allowed to breathe the oxygen we breathe. He should not be allowed to walk free on the streets when he has committed these horrendous crimes. The only thing you could possibly say in Huw Edwards' defense is that at least he wasn't making it physical with these children. And even then, I'd probably say he still deserves the same fucking treatment. So yes, I want people to see I'm visibly fucking disgusted at our justice system for allowing Huw Edwards to walk free, basically a paedophile, while people who are posting memes, people who are posting stuff on the internet are getting immediate custodial sentences. Make it make sense. And people wonder why as well I say this country's got 2 to 5 months at most. I think this is one of the biggest case in points I'm ever going to make. We have a justice system that prioritizes imprisoning far-right people, aka concerned parents, concerned patriots, who don't want their kids getting stabbed in the face, who don't want their country going down the toilet, which it is doing so at an alarming rate. Especially with Keir the traitor Starmer doing everything he can to wage war against pensioners, akin to Sadiq Khan waging war on the motorists. I cannot stress enough how important the 26th of October has just become. I cannot stress enough my anger, my disgust, my contempt towards our British establishment right now. I cannot picture it for you. I cannot express it highly enough. But I have never felt such rancour towards our government in my entire life. Yes, Gordon the Bully and Blundering Brown basically bankrupted the country. Yes, Tony the war criminal Blair has committed war crimes and gotten hundreds if not thousands of our soldiers killed. But here's the thing. At least they didn't go out of their way to protect paedophiles. They didn't go out of their way to basically want to support people like Jimmy Tiny Cockosaurus Rex Savile. At least they didn't go out of their way to persecute concerned citizens who want to make sure their children could grow up in a safe country. And at least they aren't taking political prisoners, whereas Keir the traitor Starmer is doing all of the above. And how about this for a little bit of irony? Oh, it's actually on behind me, I didn't even see that. What a coincidence. I was actually going to go to the one up there. Anyway, look at the poster, how it says, unwanted touching, enough is enough. Do we see that for Huw Edwards? I don't see it. I don't see anywhere that Huw Edwards is getting prosecuted for this shit. He is basically being let off, or he may as well be. How can Huw Edwards be allowed to walk while people like me have to worry about, oh, I might go to prison if I say the wrong thing. Oh, God forbid I say anything that has anti-establishment rhetoric. And people wonder why the country's fucked. It's because of situations like this, where you can literally get away with the most egregious crimes, yet if you speak negatively about the government, you can go to jail. The Online Harms Act potentially can see people go to jail for 18 years. It's even worse than being convicted of murder. And I've made the joke before. I've made the joke how I've pictured a guy in prison who's in jail for murder. Like, what are you in jail for? Oh, I murdered someone. I'm sitting here on 16 years in prison. What about you? What are you in for? I'm in because I spoke negatively against the government. I got 18 years. Again, make it make sense. Make it make any fucking sense whatsoever. This is our government, folks. Crooked, corrupt, treacherous, and clearly not in it for the British people, but rather in it for themselves. A lot of the MPs are merely in for money, nothing more. They're in it for money and fuck everyone else. But that's something, of course, the mainstream media are not going to tell you, because obviously that would destroy the left-wing Marxist globalist agenda. How Keir the traitor Starmer serves the WEF and Davos. If I had my way, Huw Edwards, I would make sure, I would drag him to a fucking cell, because that's where he should be right now. Because no man like that, who is willing to keep indecent images on his PC, his phone, or wherever, of children, no person like that deserves to be out in the streets, quite frankly. And he better hope to Christ the prison system actually treats him well. Because if it doesn't, and it puts him in the wrong place, oh my God, he is going to be so cooked. There are going to be prisoners, because here's the thing. Prisons have a duty of care to look after their prisoners, especially paedophiles. Because if they're in the same prison blocks as regular prisoners, they're going to get killed. Simple as that. Because even prisoners for regular crimes have standards. And they will see somebody like Huw Degenerate Edwards, and they're going to want his head on a spike, metaphorically speaking. They're going to want him dead, because of the simple fact he's targeted the most vulnerable people of them all, children. And you can't justify that shit. And that's just the prison side of things. Can you imagine what would happen if any ordinary person out on the street were to get a hold of him? there wouldn't be anything left of Huw Edwards. You'd be lucky to clean up what remains with a mop. And as I said, let me be clear, I'm not advocating for any attack on Huw Edwards, much as I detest that piece of shit. I'm not advocating for it. But you know what? I'll completely understand if somebody does decide to go for him. Because sometimes the trash does need to be taken out, metaphorically speaking. But enough about Huw Edwards. He already is making my blood boil like you wouldn't believe. Let's also start talking about Donald Trump. How he's now had to face a second assassination attempt by, I can't remember the guy's name completely off the top of my head. Was it Robert something Dowes or something like that? I can't remember off the top of my head. But apparently he's a Ukrainian activist. And this man had an AK-47. He had a scope and a GoPro. He wanted to record the whole thing. Oh god, the police have gone by. Now I really am in trouble. Anyway, Donald Trump ended up getting attacked by this Ukrainian activist. He brought a GoPro, he had an AK, he had a scope, he wanted to record the whole thing. He wanted to go the whole 9 yards. There were shots that were fired. Thankfully, Donald Trump is fine. But it does beg the question, how is it the Secret Service can let a man like that with an AK-47 anywhere near Donald Trump is beyond me. And apparently this shit was planned. Apparently, this guy just so happened to know that Donald Trump, he would have a clear line of sight on him when he was on his 5th hole in his Florida golf course, his private golf course that he was doing up there. The fact that somebody, though, could even be allowed to do that shit in the first place is beyond me. Like, as soon as they saw that man, if I was in their shoes, I'd just put one in him. Can't take the chance. Not with Donald Trump. The whole point of the Secret Service is they do everything in their power to protect Donald Trump. Like, if you're part of the Secret Service, you do everything you can to protect the president. Or one of the candidates who could potentially be president. I would want the exact same thing for Kamala Harris. Though bear in mind, she hasn't actually faced any assassination attempts, and let me be clear, I'm not calling for any. But I find it funny how Donald Trump has faced 2 assassination attempts. Kamala hasn't faced any. But I'm guaranteeing you this much, if Kamala Harris was targeted, do you think these left-wing NPCs would be saying, oh, it's a shame they missed, or I wish the shooter was a better shot, or should have bought a better gun, or this, that, and the other. Basically, it's a shame they missed. No, they'd be saying it's an absolute outrage. They'd be saying, why has this happened? They'd be calling for the arrest of this person, or the death of this person, quite rightly, and they would be basically wanting to make sure the shooter was apprehended in some way or another. But when it's Donald Trump, because the lefties are like, orange man bad, they are basically like, oh, such a shame that they missed, better luck next time, or what have you. Like, no, you can't justify that shit. That's basically akin to endorsing violence against your political opponents. It sickens me that there are left-wing cavemen, basically, and cave women, just to make sure I include the women in this as well that are posting this shit. There are cavemen and women wishing death upon Donald Trump. Like, you don't see me wishing death upon Kamala. You don't see Tommy Robinson wishing death on Kamala. You don't see any decent person, American, British, or whatever, wishing death on Kamala. Maybe wish her don't get into power, but not death, or getting hurt, because that's called having a moral compass. That's called having basic human decency, something these cavemen and women don't know anything about. And if it were down to me, I think anybody who has endorsed violence against Donald Trump should be arrested, quite frankly. It's inciting violence. It's inciting hatred. And the cold bit of truth on that is, the inciting violence bit, most definitely, they need to be charged on, 100%. Whether or not you like Donald Trump should not be an excuse to justify harm against a political figure. It's the same thing with Keir the Traitor Starmer and Sadiq Khan. I may hate those two loathsome scumbags, but do you see me wishing death upon them? Or saying, oh, it's a shame nobody's attempted an assassination on them? No, you don't, because, quite rightly, I'd be arrested for that shit. And besides, I have a moral compass. I'd like to think I know better. I wouldn't wish that shit on my worst enemies, let alone the president. And I shouldn't have to say shit like this, because I said, it's not even just common sense, it's basic human decency, it's basic human principles. So, if anybody in America has any decency in them whatsoever, they'll do everything they can to arrest anybody on the left or the right, or even the centre, who is advocating for violence against these political figures. It is not their right to wish harm or death upon significant figures in politics. And frankly, I think it's time we call this out for what it really is. Thankfully, as said, the shooter, Robert Dowes, or whatever his surname was, has been arrested. He's being held. Good on them for getting him alive. Because now we can really get into the mind of this Ukrainian activist who basically wants to attack Trump. Are lefties going to imply now that Trump is the man responsible for all the shit that's happening in Ukraine? Wouldn't surprise me at this point. About time I got off. I actually need to do some shopping as well. Anyway, the point is that anybody who can wish harm upon a figure should be punished to the full extent of the law. Likewise, if I were to say, oh, Keir the traitor Starmer should go die in a fire, I should be arrested and sentenced for it. Obviously, these aren't my opinions, I'm just putting them out there just as an example, more than anything. But we should start treating this much more seriously. And I call all those people that want to wish harm and violence on them, I call them scumbags, cavemen, subhuman pieces of shit. Because unlike a lot of people who may not want to say it how it is, I'm not going to sugarcoat a motherfucking thing. I am not going to mince my words, and I will say it exactly how it is. And I will do my best not to bullshit you. God, she can gob off for England, can't she? Anyway, I'm not going to say it how... I am going to say it exactly how it is. I'm not going to mince my words over it. I do not like the idea that lefties can be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want, whereas we've got to be careful of even causing the slightest bit of offence. Fuck that, quite frankly. At the end of the day, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and we should call out anybody who is saying, oh, better luck next time, or wish they were a better shot, or whatever. Because it is tantamount to inciting violence. And I don't know about you, but last time I checked, inciting violence is a criminal act, whether it's in the US or whether it's in the UK. And I think we need to see more punishments being dished out to these fuckers instead of Keir the traitor Starmer taking political prisoners who disagree with the way he does things, just because he doesn't like other people's opinions. It's high time Keir the traitor Starmer actually finds that tiny pair of balls that he has and starts using them. Because it's going to take a man with a pair of balls, whether upstairs or downstairs, or in my case, both, to be able to sort this country out. But you know what is really funny in all this? Keir the traitor Starmer did say something about the Donald Trump assassination attempt. And what's sad is, before I go into that, even stroke number 3, we're setting records here, folks. CNN News decided even they had to admit this was an assassination attempt. Now that is one for the storybooks. At least I can give them some credit where it's due. But that aside, Keir the traitor Starmer did have something to say about the assassination attempt. He said he was very worried. Well, in the tone of voice he used, I think he was about as lively and all that shit. I think he was about as lively as a funeral, quite frankly. He was so unconvincing, so soulless, so lifeless. You'd almost think the man was dead. But then that's Keir the traitor Starmer for you. A man who wants to screw over the elderly, take away their bus passes, take away their winter fuel payments, wants to take political prisoners just because of things they say on the internet. And of course, taking those political prisoners, he wants to silence anybody who is against this globalist agenda that Keir the traitor Starmer has right now. He doesn't want people saying the truth. He doesn't want people opposing him. He doesn't want people calling out his treachery and deceit. How he can say, oh, we don't have 300 quid for pensioners. Oh, but we got 600 fucking million for the Ukrainian people. How can you make that make sense? That's like telling me that I can look up in the clouds right now, and even though it's not raining right now, I could say it's raining. That's basically Keir the traitor Starmer in a nutshell. It could be a beautiful sunny day, and he'd find a way to tell you it's raining. Why don't you piss on my leg as well while you're at it, Keir the traitor Starmer? I don't think he understands what little time he has left as a Prime Minister. Even his own MPs want him out of power. Even the MPs that are supposed to be with him want to take out the trash, metaphorically speaking, of course. Because they will do anything to keep a hold of this. 91k, 182k in expenses paid by the taxpayer. £3,000 in heating that they can get for their fucking houses, whether it's one or two of them. But you can't be bothered to give 300 quid to pensioners. Like, if you don't give me 300 quid, I don't give a fuck, because I'm just a 33-year-old guy. And besides, I've got enough insulation as it is. I'm not just talking about the coat. Anyway, I've got enough insulation to do me well. The elderly don't. And I mentioned the story before, how I had to go one winter and my heating wasn't even on and I didn't even bloody know. And that's my fault, admittedly. But it doesn't change the fact that when I had no heating in my home and it got to minus temperatures, even I was violently shivering. And that's saying something, considering I'm 19 stone of fucking truth. You'd be lucky to see an elderly person that's 11 or 12 stone, let alone 19. And I think at that point they'd probably be dead by then, or at the very least at death's door. But of course, Keir the traitor Starmer, I guess devil's advocate here, he had to say something about Donald Trump, otherwise he's basically endorsing it. Like, Keir the traitor Starmer did have to say he was worried, even if he was about as convincing as a funeral director that we're about to have a wonderful day. I reckon at most, Keir the traitor Starmer maybe has a year. I don't think he's got any more than that. I think the idea that he could attempt to last 5 years is beyond impossible. Like, there is no shot that Keir the traitor Starmer lasts 1 year, let alone 5. You've got to be joking me on that shit. Look at his approval ratings. His approval rating right now, 19%. 19% approval rating for Keir the traitor Starmer. That should tell you everything you need to know about him. Pedo protector, pensioner robber, or killer, because he could potentially kill 4,000 elderly people throughout the winter. Taking away their bus passes, taking political prisoners, and that's just a few things. I'm pretty sure I could probably dig up something else. Oh yeah, there was a time actually where he got covered in glitter as well. That was probably the only time Keir the traitor Starmer actually had a sparkling personality. How sad is it? He needs somebody to fucking vandalize him in order to have that personality, though. But I can tell you right now, there is nothing funny about Keir the traitor Starmer being in power. A man who will do everything he can to destroy this country and get us to rejoin the EU. And I may be in liberal Norwich, who most of them voted Remain, but I remain one of the people, alongside my mother, who actually voted for Brexit, who didn't want us to be part of a United States of Europe, paying £55 million a day gross for a club that basically does fuck all for us. To be still tied, as of this day, despite Brexit, to the ECHR, because none of our politicians had the bollocks to actually take us out of the ECHR. It says it all. Our political class hold the working class and ordinary people in contempt. They would rather run over their own grandmothers than actually give the British people what they want. That's where I have the problem. And I think Keir the traitor Starmer is on borrowed time right now. I honestly don't see him lasting much longer. I really don't. Because what's going to happen on the 26th is Tommy Robinson is going to pull off the biggest rally in London this country has ever seen, the world has ever seen. We're going to see that firsthand. And I'm going to be a part of that shit, because I'm not going to miss this for the world. And together, me, you, Tommy Robinson, Maya Toosey, Paul Thorpe, just to name a few, all of us, we're going to make a difference in this country. And we're going to hold our establishment to account and tell them we are not tolerating your treachery, your deceit, and your corrupt running of this country. I think Keir the traitor Starmer is going to receive an enormous wake-up call. Like, if he thinks that we were angry before, he hasn't seen anything yet. But I think he's going to see it soon enough. And when he does, he will realize what a massive mistake he's made, taking political prisoners, pissing our taxpayer money up the wall, taking money away from pensioners, and making us look like a laughingstock to the world. I think Keir the traitor Starmer is going to be so shocked at what happens on the 26th of October, he may even just have a heart attack seeing the numbers on the streets who want to see the man removed from power and the power given back to the people.